How do you make your pens so glossy? One of the most frequent questions I get. The answer is simple but also complicated. There are a few processes which bring out the gloss of Urushi. One of them is Dozuri, so the sanding and initial polishing. The other one is Uwazuri. Uwazuri is a very different one because you are not just polishing the pen, which is subtractive process, so you are removing something from the surface with finer and finer grit, but also you are adding to it. So you are applying additional layers of ultra fine, very high quality raw Urushi. And this is what I'm going to show you today and discuss it a little bit. I prepared everything I need for this process, and join me. So we will need, of course, the Uwazuri type Urushi. So I will use Ise-haya Urushi, but you can also use Roiro Ise-haya, Uwazuri Urushi, Kijomi Urushi, or in case you are a beginner and you do not want to spend a lot of money on Urushi, you can use just decent quality fresh raw Urushi too. The layer is super thin and actually it's almost non-existent. You are just filling the grooves. So at initial stages of your work with Urushi, it should not be a problem. You will not get such stellar results you could achieve with Roiro Ise-haya, for example, but it will be good enough and great for practice for sure. First, we need to apply Urushi on the pens, and I have prepared a few pens finished with a Dozuri sequence, so sanding and polishing with finer and finer grit up to more or less 5,000–10,000 grit. Initial stages were with sandpaper and sanding blocks, and then with the polishing powders and polishing compounds. I mean this 5,000–7,000 grit. All of these pens are in Kawari-nuri technique, or the version of the Kawari-nuri technique. It's a Nanako-nuri, like crazy Kawari-nuri in several types, Kawari-nuri with gold and another Nanako-nuri. So let's see what we can do with that. As usual, we start with filtering the Urushi. I will use the pre-cut. I have a box prepared with pre-cut Yoshino paper, and I will squeeze a little bit of Urushi on the paper directly. How much? Well, you need to gauge yourself. Just do it 100 times and you will know how much for 6 pens. I'm joking, of course, but it comes with practice. Weighting it's a unnecessary hassle and you can never be sure. So just get some practice. If you squeeze out too much and filter too much of Urushi, you can transfer it back to the tube. Just try not to contaminate it. So clean spatula and you can transfer it back. Pens are cleaned, and next thing we'll need is something to put the Urushi on the pens. I will prepare some kind of a package, a tampon or something like that, with a lint-free cloth, which is non-move and wind-free cloth. I will fill it up with some other stuff which makes it more usable. What's inside is less important. It can be a wipe or piece of soft cloth or something like that, or a cotton. I will secure it with a piece of tape. As you notice, I rarely use gloves. I use gloves mostly when I work with Fuki Urushi, because then I use a lot of Urushi and it's very difficult to control everything all the time. So I use gloves then, but normally I don't use them, so I risk getting Urushi under my fingernails, which is pretty horrible to get them out. It just stays there, and that's why my hand sometimes looks funny. So a warning. I apply Urushi on cleaned pan, and I just rub it in the surface. The layer we are after is extremely thin. So you are not even wetting it with Urushi. You just rub it, tiny amount of Urushi in the pen surface. Pretty even. And this rubbing motion is important because if you just apply it, it will not penetrate the micro grooves and pits and micro cracks on the surface of the pen. You cannot see them even in 20 times magnification, but if you use 100 times microscope, you will see that Urushi is pretty rough at this stage. It looks just quite shiny, but still it's far from what we are going to achieve. Most people who fail with Uwazuri stage, they do not fail with Uwazuri. I talked to a pen maker who works with Urushi quite a long time, and he struggled with Uwazuri, and he said that he applies 20 layers of Uwazuri. And I, what? How is it possible? It makes zero sense. 20 layers make zero sense. Doesn't matter what kind of technique you are working on. He said that the surface is so difficult to fill in that he must apply 20 layers. So I said, no way, you just fail at Dozuri stage. So the pen prepared for Uwazuri should be almost perfect. In terms of a gloss, if you take the scale of glossiness of the surface from 0 to 10, like 0 is perfectly matte and 10 is like perfect, the most perfect Uwazuri Roiro Urushi you can ever achieve or you have ever seen. So the pen prepared for my Uwazuri work is usually around 3 to 5 already in the scale of gloss. So just after one layer and one polish, it gets to 8, and 2 subsequent layers and polishing in most cases brings it to 9 or 10, depending on the type of Urushi. Of course, it is different with some colors, because some colors or some colored Urushi, Iro Urushi, can be pretty soft even if it's properly cured. But then you are using Urushi not just to bring out the gloss, but also to harden the surface of Urushi. It penetrates, especially with white and bright colors Urushi, it penetrates the surface of Urushi and makes it much harder. And typically you start with those stages of suri Urushi, not exactly Uwazuri Urushi, but suri Urushi, even before ending the Dozuri stage, so sanding and polishing stage. Because you cannot sand something which is soft. You cannot polish anything which is soft. You can polish something which is already hard. So you first must make it harder with Uwazuri type Urushi, but usually diluted and heavily diluted with turpentine. And then cure it and sand it or polish it again and repeat this sequence several times. I will probably cut to the finished tray of pens, because this is pretty boring, just applying Urushi on subsequent pieces of pens and including the areas behind the threads and the tenon. So it's boring, but I will tell you about the threads, because people ask me if I lacquer the threads. I always lacquer the threads. In 99% of my pens, threads are lacquered. The pens I do not lacquer the threads are usually pens I receive from someone made in ebonite or any other material, but not prepared for Urushi work. So threads are too tight and cannot be lacquered, but all my pens have threads lacquered. The minimum is the black layer, so like the primer and the black layer. But I also apply Uwazuri once on the threads. So I polish them several times. I make sure that they are hard and smooth. And then I apply diluted Uwazuri Urushi, the hardest type I have, so Roiroi Sehaya. On the threads, I wipe it off very, very thoroughly, and I polish them again. It's not on this stage. It's typically the last but one stage of Uwazuri, but yes, I do it. Let's do some movie magic, and let's jump to finish off applying the Uwazuri on the pens. Last two parts. And as you can see, I have a little bit of Isehaya Urushi left, but I don't worry, because I will use it just after this. I will use it to seal some gold on gilded pens. This will be probably in one of the other videos soon. So we have this sequence finished, and now the second part. We rubbed in Urushi into the pens. The surface is like really, really thin, but we will still wipe it off. So we'll make it even thinner. The goal is to leave Urushi just in the grooves, in the cracks, in the scratches of the surface of the pen. There's one more function of Uwazuri, but also suri Urushi sequence, which is very similar, is to seal the surface of the pen. You notice that this pen is covered with a lot of gold layers, and even if it's gold, and this one is like 23.5 karat, but for example on this one I used 14 karat blue gold to have this effect. You want to protect it from the direct exposure to the air, so Urushi also seals the surface. What I use to wipe off the Urushi from the pens, this is from Kimberly-Clark, non-woven, zero lint cloth wipe. It's Whipple 70. This is a cloth which is also lint free. I bought it from Amazon, and this is used for removing the makeup. This is bamboo, non-woven, ultra smooth and soft cloth I also found on Amazon. I tested it on many pens, and it works great for me, but the cheapest and the easiest is just a box of Kleenex, and it works well too on most cases. You just need to be sure that there is no lint left. The fine thing about Uwazuri is that lint is your main enemy in all the layers which you apply with a brush. But with Uwazuri, there is almost nothing for lint to stick to. If you do your job well in removing Urushi, in wiping off Urushi from the pen, the little bit of lint, the finest lint from lignin or something like this, is not a problem. Anyway, try to not to get anything which is very linty. I will start with this, and we will repeat the sequence on all the pans, just wiping them like really well off. We apply to Urushi just to wipe it off. Don't worry, what must be there, it will still be there. Take some care, more care about the areas which are hard to get to, especially if the pen has some structure or surface which is not smooth. Use more soft wipe which can adapt to the surface of the pen better. But I tend to remove the first part with just this cloth, and then move to this and remove Urushi from behind the threads, from some crevices and areas around the lip of the cup, and from the lip of the section. And exactly the same with all other pens. So again, pretty boring, so I will spare you this process, but you just have to do it one by one. Never touch the surface of the pen after, like with your fingers, directly after you wipe off the Urushi. Why? Because you may not see it, but Urushi is still there, and you may not see it, but your hands are dirty and your hands are oily, and you do not want to transfer even the tiniest bit of oil on the pen. So try to avoid this at all cost. Once it's cured, it's okay, provided that you will clean it again before applying another layer of Urushi. The last two pieces and finished. Now we will cure it. This type of lacquer and the first layer I tend to cure at around 80% of relative humidity and 20 to 24 degrees centigrade, and it will take around 24 hours. They will be ready for another stage. But if the colors were lighter, I would probably lower the humidity and cure it for 38 hours. Especially if it would be a diluted layer on light colors. But it will come with some experience. I cannot define a table what to do with each type of color, each type of Urushi, and what furo settings to use. The funny thing is that with some experience, you will notice that depending on the type of technique and depending on the stage of Uwazuri, or depending on if you did a good job on Dozuri stage, the paper on the surface of Urushi or the wipe moves differently. It glides or it catches, and it gets you a feedback what you need to do next. If it needs some more aggressive polishing, like getting back to 5000 or 7000 grit, or another layer of Uwazuri Urushi after curing, or you can follow with polishing, so with grits above 10,000, and eventually the Migakiko powder or Tsunoka powder. Anyway, that's it. I am Michael, and you are the guests of a Tamenuri studio. Thank you.